Let's do roll call.
White. Here. Mark.
Here.
Cavell is running late. Spiz.
Present.
Chavez.
Present.
Woodward. Here.
Excellent.
You have quorum.
Thank you. Let us then do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Chair.
Good.
No microphone. All righty. Now you probably can hear me. So we are at the approval of the minutes. Are there any corrections to the minutes of the previous meeting?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from April 6, 2022.
Second.
Wonderful, thank you. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None? Motion carried. Next, we are at the approval of the agenda. Are there any changes or corrections to the agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda for May 4th, 2022, as presented.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll support it.
Thank you, Ms. Markham. And I think we need a roll call to approve the agenda. Voice vote will be fine.
I prompted the vote.
Okay,
We can do it either way you want.
I like it. Terrific. So we'll wait for the results of that.
Yeah, 5 days, 0 days.
Wonderful, that motion carries. Next on the agenda is public comment. Public comment. Is there anyone from the public who would like to address the committee today? Please come to the microphone and state your name and residence location for the record.
Ross Baranco, Novi, Michigan. I see that we have on the agenda something about the Oxford shooting incident on there. That's,
That was yesterday.
oh, one yesterday's. Okay, I'm sorry. I just didn't, I was just curious why we're still working on the funding for Oxford. It's almost 6 months now, and we got the pot shops financed pretty quick, and we're,
Ross?
yep.
It pains me to interrupt you, but I don't believe that is actually on the agenda. If you'd like to reserve that comment for our second public comment, you're welcome to. Is there anything on the agenda you'd like to speak to?
No, thank you.
Okay, no worries, thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to address the body regarding anything on the agenda? Please come up, Ms. Kennedy. State your name and residence for the record.
Catherine Kennedy from Lake Orion.
Thank you.
And there's several things on this particular agenda I have concerns with. The first is 10G, Automation Alley in Oakland County, Michigan is being designated by the World Economic Forum as the U.S.'s first and only advanced manufacturing center. And this claims to have been started, why is there, am I hearing reverb?
Give it a second, Ms. Kennedy.
Something's going on.
Yeah, just turn speakers down.
Yeah. And I'll start when you start.
Okay, we're all set? Okay, Catherine Kennedy from Lake Orion, and I'm very concerned 10G, Automation Alley in Oakland County, is being designated by the World Economic Forum as the U.S.'s first and only advanced manufacturing center. And this claims that we became Automation Alley in 2018. And I have a 1987 annual report of economic development, and Daniel Murphy already had the automation supply sector in Michigan, and the entire thing was already established back in, this is the 1987 annual report. So the claim that this was created in 2018 is absurd. The fact that we have anybody listening to a World Economic Forum that is not paying our taxes, has no interest in our area other than to destroy it and take control of it, is absolutely offensive to me as a citizen. And yet we're going to put $3 million, government involvement. Government involvement ruins industry. They're always a decade behind industry and they don't even know it. Often we're purchasing things that are obsolete technology. Why? Why we should not be listening to anybody in a foreign interest or any other region to take over assets which are in our county. Why are you smiling, Mr. Woodward? This seems odd that you find it humorous that the World Economic
Make sure you address the
Forum-
chair,
Yes.
please. Thank you.
Sorry, just a little distracting. This is not okay. People need to wake up. We are being sold out to the foreign interests. The entire environmental agenda they had is based on UN. For no poverty, they're destroying our property. They're destroying and not conserving. That conservation is the way to preserve our economy and our environment, not this craziness. Now, the fact that we have to have, I don't know why we would be declaring ourselves a water town. I don't understand what's the purpose of that. I have issues with the broadband feasibility study for $1 million for feasibility study. And so far, it's my understanding that foreign interests were the ones that were being considered for suppliers of our broadband. So the last thing we need to do is confirm this digital transformation of this county and increase their IT budget to do so, because it simply takes away
Please wrap up your
everything we
comments.
have.
Thank you, Ms. Kennedy.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address this body for public comment? Seeing none, I will close public comment. That takes us into communications. We do need a motion to receive and file communication item A, which is the Road Improvement Fiscal Year 2022 application for local road improvement program.
I'll move it.
Thank you, Mr. Weipert. Is there support? Mr. Spiz, moved and supported. All in favor? Are we prompting the vote?
We can do it either way you want.
Yes, let's prompt a vote. Thank you.
This is just a receive and file. This is
Receive
the
and-
application for the report.
Yes.
You have 6 0 nays.
6 yeas, 0 nays. Motion passes. Motion carried. Moving on to item 8 in our agenda, which is presentations. There's no reason for our motions to open this. It's just a receive and file.
At the end, but so
Okay, thank you. We'll start with Water Resource Commissioner presentation of WRC 2021 Annual Report. I see our Water Resource Commissioner, Mr. Nash, here, and you can introduce anyone else with you.
Well, good morning. Thank you very much. I appreciate being here. I'm with Steve Korth, who just popped on the picture. Lean Seymour is going to be talking about something later. Ann Vara, my chief deputy, is here. Amy Plouffe, in charge of water, and she'll be talking about the next presentation in just a couple minutes. I'm here to present the annual report. We do it every year. It ran from, up for the year ending in October, end of September of last year. We cover, and every year we cover all the projects we've been doing. There's a lot of projects that we carry on a constant basis. The couple in the letter, we point out in Pontiac, we did some water main work, 8-inch water main, significant water main, a little over 2 miles, 2.25 miles that we replaced last year. This is in a long-term plan of replacing this extremely old infrastructure, and all around Pontiac. There's a lot of newer infrastructure. Some of it we put in, and we're going to be working on that for a long time to come. The OMID, Oklahoma-Macomb Interceptor drainage district, the Northeast Pump Station, we've been working on that. We're replacing some very old stuff that's been there a long time with the new high-tech things that should make it operate much more smoothly. It's nothing smooth in large operations like this, so you discover other problems as you're fixing the first problem. So it's an ongoing program. And the last thing I'm going to mention that's not in the letter is our affordability group that we've been operating for, gosh, almost a year and a half now, including Pontiac and Royal Oak Township, the cities that we have in our communities that are most issues, have the most issues with affordability for their ratepayers. So we've been working with them. We got a grant right about this time last year from the state to do this on a more regional and statewide basis. So we're trying to come up with best practices and a plan to help all the communities in the state better help their customers with affordability issues. And this is something we've been working across the state, the country, and even internationally, kind of getting advice on how best to approach these things. So we work with a group from the communities, a stakeholder group of about, well, we send out about 75 invitations every month for our meetings, and we get about 40 to 45 people at our meetings. A lot of community buy-in, and we're making sure that everybody understands that we're working for a really sustainable future for affordability. So that's what we're doing now. If I can answer any other questions, or any of my folks here can, we're happy to do so.
Is there anyone who'd like to make a comment or ask any questions? Yeah, before you start, Mr. Cabell, I'm just trying to identify that feedback. Is it our side or their side? So, needless to say, go ahead, Mr. Cabell.
Thanks. This is just the annual report. We're going to do the lead line replacement PowerPoint next, right?
Yes, that's coming up. My
Okay.
Amy Plouffe, my expert, will talk about that.
Okay, no questions then. All right.
Terrific.
But get ready in the next thing.
Any other questions? Mr. Smith?
Yes, thanks, Jim, I appreciate it. I'm just wondering, I have the digital report in my packet, but I know there's some people here that may not have access to this or reviewed it. Are there any other high points that you want to touch on that are in that report to share with everybody else?
Well, I'll ask Steve. Steve, is way more informed on these things as they go day to day. Go ahead, Steve. Oh, you're not coming through.
You're not on mute, but can't hear you.
How about now? Is the microphone working?
There you go.
Okay. Yeah, probably the largest effort that our office has been undertaking. It's approaching a $200 million investment in the Oakland-Macomb interceptor system. And I know Jim touched on it, but there's just a lot of work over the last 10 years, and we probably have 3 or 4 more years to go to upgrade this pump station in the city of Detroit and the associated 25 miles of large diameter sewer serving that part of the region. So that's probably the biggest example of the regional effort that our office is involved in with GLWA and Macomb County as well.
All right, thank you. I guess to follow up on that, I know there's a section on finances. Any high point finance comments you want to make?
Well, we're financing a project up in the where is it? North of the county right now. It's a lake level and some drainage issues that we're fixing there. We're just finishing that bond up. I know that we're looking at several other bonds going forward. Steve, you want to?
Sure. There's a drain called the Bald Eagle Lake Drain, which we're financing. Again, just aging infrastructure, replacing an entire drain up in the northern part of Oakland County. And then a recent bond sale that's coming up that went along with the county rating from the rating agencies. That's associated with a water tank in Oakland Township. And so again, improving these systems for water quality.
Thank you for touching on both the project in my district. I appreciate that.
Mr. Woodward?
Is that a quiz?
Well, I guess I gotta say that in that bond process, it reaffirmed our county's AAA bond rating, and that's what was, heralded at the economic forecast. So, again, congratulations, and I think congratulations to the entire team, the finance team. My question, coming back to financing and projects, I mean, we have this unprecedented time in history with the the federal bipartisan infrastructure bill that passed. And so is there anything, I mean, and we've got time, but obviously a lot of it, I mean, it's getting those proposals in there, particularly for the discretionary space. Are there any, I guess from a WRC's perspective, because you wear so many hats of maintaining operations of systems, providing guidance to local communities, and all these other types of things, is there anything on the horizon would you rate as like a top priority of us collectively working together to bring down some of those resources?
Well, I'll start out with, we got, last year, we got 2 earmarks for Pontiac and Royal Oak Township, $1 million altogether. And we've been working with the board to just distribute some of the ARP money to local communities, because they have to do those planning parts of these projects that usually aren't covered by the grants. So that's something that we've been doing locally. We're going to help this year again with earmarks, but we got a grant. I guess it's a principal forgiveness grant for, I think it was $5 million for lead lines in Pontiac, and I'm not sure how much in Royal Oak, another one there. So these are part of what's going to be coming, is these forgivable loans through the state revolving fund. It looks like that's where they're going to be sending a lot of this money through, because we can't just use loans. A lot of these communities, loans are just more money the ratepayers have to pay too. So we're looking to try to do this in a way that's going to increase the amount of money that's coming into our systems for these future projects. And again, all of this is around both safety and health. And one of the problems we have, that there's legislation now moving, hopefully through the House and Senate. The SRF program really doesn't allow for stormwater projects for flooding, just for water quality. So there's legislation now, I think it's already been written, that's going to go through, that's going to allow us to use these kind of refundable loans for stormwater problems. And that's, again, going forward, as the climate is getting warmer, we're seeing heavier rainstorms, and it's just getting more. And we saw it last year. We saw it in 2014 in Oakland County. These are the things that we've got to start really becoming prepared for and become resilient to. We need to have our systems so they don't get overwhelmed by these storms. And going forward, that's going to be a major thrust of what we do.
Right. And just my last question is related to what you said. I mean, just with climate change, the intensity of these storms, even if it's about the same amount of rain coming down, it's the speed in which it comes down, and we're not going to be able to build ourselves the gray infrastructure. And we have one of the absolute largest water retention systems in the world already, and it still is able to get filled up in a matter of an hour with the rainfall. So can you speak a little bit? I mean, I don't know if it's captured. I mean, I saw the highlights here, so maybe it's in the details. I mean, you've been probably the most aggressive in trying to advance green infrastructure and partner with local communities. Can you talk a little bit about that, or anyone on your team, about not only what it is, but specifically how a water resource commission is showing up and partnering with local communities to address green infrastructure?
Sure. There's a couple of things you're saying here. One was the very fast storms, and that area experienced one about 3 years ago, I think it was. A major flood happened. Well, not flood, a major flood. There was a storm that was about 1.5 miles wide and 3 miles long that just kind of slid through the George W. Kuhn area. And it rained so hard that the flooding happened in the small areas before it even reached our bigger pipes. There was so much coming in at once. So part of what we need to do is keep that water on the surface, not get it into those stormwater drains. So the green infrastructure is that approach. And there's a gray infrastructure project that's going on that'll help in the George W. Kuhn area. Along I-75 from 12 Mile to 8 Mile, they're putting in a 14.5-foot storage pipe 100 feet underground. All that water from that area used to go right into the George W. Kuhn. Now it won't anymore. The first, 1 million or so will, because that's the first flush. It takes the pollutants. After that, it's good, clean water that goes right into a storm drain. So that's at least 25 million gallons of storm water that won't go in a huge storm into the George W. Kuhn evermore. And then the smaller, fast-moving storms and the larger storms, to prevent flooding, green infrastructure, keeping that on the ground. simple things like a storm drain. You restrict the flow in that storm drain. Instead of just flowing freely, you put small holes in it so it stays in the street. Better in the street that goes away slowly than in your storm drain that can flood homes. So there's a lot that we can do, and small parks can do that. There's green infrastructure in several parks already in the George W. Kuhn areas. Royal Oak is an example. So we're working to encourage that. We want to partner with communities all over the county, not just the urban communities, and work together. We can work with the Michigan State Extension Service. They have a Master Gardener program. They're interested in helping with these kind of things. These are just gardens. So this is the kind of thing we can do, and we're working towards, and the communities are really heading in a good direction that way. That was a lot.
Thank you.
Mr. Spitz.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just one final point. It's more of a recommendation. Because the annual report's 252 pages long. Is there a way maybe for years going forward, we can put like an executive summary in there? So somebody doesn't have to go line by line. 'Cause I think most of that is finances. You know, I think a good 2-3 page executive summary would be beneficial to all of us and beneficial to the public that doesn't necessarily have the time to read through 252 pages of information. I think it just, and maybe it would help when you come in front of us next year too to do that as a presentation to us. Just hit those high points, touch on everything, and move on. Just a recommendation.
Oh, absolutely. If we didn't do that, I'm sorry. We do have an electronic version of that, and we normally include it. If we didn't, I'm sorry, that's my fault. We'll make sure we do. We can send it out to you ASAP. It's only a few pages, and it really breaks everything down well.
All right, I'm just looking at a 252-page document. I didn't see a summary in here.
I got you. I'm so sorry. We should have done that.
All right, awesome. Thank you.
Any other questions on the presentation A?
No, it's.
I would just interject, and I think it piggybacks on what Mr. Spiz just said, which is my question simply, and it may, this annual report might be a good space for it, but it may also be a better location, and you guys would know better, but some type of animation, because quite honestly, this is all very, to see it is to understand it, and to be able to help our communities understand what we're talking about. I just, sometimes animation goes a long way. I just want to share that, and that's my only comment. Thank you for this report.
Absolutely. This is the thing that the law says we have to deliver. We almost always have the executive, report with it. Again, we will make sure you get that right away. We have hard copies too, so we can send you both. And just to make sure you guys get it. I'm really sorry you didn't.
And I'm assuming that's on your website too, right? Your webpage? Did you hear that? I'm assuming that's on your webpage too, the executive summary?
Absolutely.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
All right, then.
Steve, do you want to?
Go ahead, Mr. Nash.
I'm sorry. Steve, did you want to add something?
Yeah, there's not a written executive summaries. I think what the request was, it's more of a list of our projects that we're planning on, that we're currently undertaking, and that we recently completed. But I think I understand the request to be more of a presentation type for next year, hitting the highlights of our project. We can throw it together a half a dozen slides and really touch on some of the significant work we've done or am planning to do. And we could set that up for next year for sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oftentimes, a SWOT analysis people think is old school, but I feel like it just checks off all the boxes. Were you going to add anything?
I love the idea of an animation. I think a dancing raindrop named Jimmy explaining how we do all of this. And let it be known here, good ideas came around this table.
That's what we do here. Nothing but good ideas.
So funny.
Having said that, we need, I will accept a motion to receive and file the WRC 2021 annual report.
So moved.
Mr. Support. Wonderful. Thank you. Move to support it. Let's prompt the vote to receive and file.
Six, eight, zero, nice.
6 yeas, 0 nays, unanimous, motion carried. Takes us to our presentation B, Water Resources Commissioner presentation regarding lead service line replacement in Pontiac. Mr. Nash, the microphone is yours.
Well, thank you again. I am going to just completely leave this to Amy Pluff, our water engineer, chief engineer. So go ahead, Amy.
All right, good morning. Can you hear me?
It's a little muffled, but okay.
Thank you. All right, that's wonderful. That's the hardest part. All right, so we're going to talk about lead in drinking water today, especially in the city of Pontiac. You could go to the next slide, please. So Sid Lockhart and I attended the March 2nd presentation to discuss the Pontiac bond sale for $5 million for lead service line replacement. And after that meeting, there were several questions that came up. So we're here today to address those issues. So today's topics, we're going to cover the Weir State operated water system. We're going to look at needs and repairs in water systems. We'll look at the cost and funding available for those repairs. We'll talk about the cost to the county and just long-term funding for water and sewer improvement. We also received a couple additional questions from Commissioner Cavell, so we'll cover those throughout the presentation as we go. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is the Oakland County Water Resources Commissioner's Office. So on the map, you can see that the blue hashes represent the service area of the Great Lakes Water Authority. So those communities receive treated surface water from the GLWA. The communities outside that area are groundwater supplied well systems. So the the communities that are shaded in yellow are systems that are operated by WRC that are well supplied, and then the blue shading represents communities that are operated by WRC that are Great Lakes Water Authority supplied systems. We have called out two highlighted communities here just as a note, Pleasant Ridge and Sylvan Lake. So those are communities that we're just going to start operating. We just got the agreement signed for those last week, and we're excited about that. But why do we operate systems for communities? And there's two basic things. One is economy of scale. WRC, we have the crews, we have the equipment, have the licensed operators to do this work. But when communities have us operate their systems, they don't need to maintain that expertise.
Amy, can I interrupt you just a moment?
Yes.
I'm sorry. I don't know if anyone else is having a hard time picking up those words, and I think what you're saying is really important. Perhaps you could test your mic with you on mute and test your mic on your end, or dial in if your microphone isn't working properly.
Okay. And if I can move it closer, is that better?
That's better.
Much better.
Much better?
We need to get you a headset.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Sorry, my internal camera failed last week, so I got an external one, and when I tested it, it worked well, so I apologize. Is that better?
A little better.
Yeah.
Can you just make me speak a little louder? It's
Okay. All right. I apologize. Is that better?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right. I'm going to use my outside voice inside. Okay. All right. So just to quickly summarize this slide then. So this represents the service area of the Oakland County Water Resources Commissioner Office. The yellow shading represents communities that are well supplied, that we operate in. The blue represents communities that are served by the Great Lakes Water Authority. So the communities that are shaded completely in blue are communities that we operate that are Great Lakes Water Authority supplied customers. So why do communities have WRC operate their water system? Well, we do this for two reasons primarily. One is level of service. So WRC has contractors to do this work. We have the skills, we have the knowledge. So we can do this for communities. We provide an excellent level of service, and they don't need to maintain that in-house. And the other is an economy of scale. Because we have large contractors to do this work, we have a large meter contract. Most of the county buys their meters through our contract. We just have an economy of scale that people get a better rate for doing this work with WRC doing it. So overall, it works out very well for both the communities and for WRC. Next slide, please. All right, so we're just going to zoom in on one of the communities that's operated by Oakland County, and that is the city of Pontiac. So we're going to talk about lead in drinking water, particularly. So the primary source of lead in drinking water is customer plumbing, and the service line that provides water to individual homes. So that's, we call that the water service line. It's typically a 1-inch line, runs from the water main in the street into the home. When we did a records review in the city of Pontiac, we found that lead was used as the primary service line material through about 1937. That gives you a sense of time of when lead was used as a service line material. So in 2018, Michigan updated the lead and copper rule in response to the crisis incident. When that rule went into effect, there were many new requirements for drinking water systems. One of those was a community required to complete a preliminary service line materials inventory. So what they asked all of us to do is to go do a records research and tell them what their service line materials were. We used that information to develop this map. So the communities that are shaded in yellow reported that they had known lead or unknown service line materials in their drinking water systems. So then another change in the Michigan drinking water rule that came through at that point was that they changed water sampling requirements. So communities were required to request to do complete more sampling at more homes. So we used 2-liter sample approaches now. And because of the change in the sampling protocols, additional communities exceeded the lead action level. So you can see those communities that are highlighted in orange. And the largest change in the drinking water rule that was impacted in 2018 was service line replacement. So communities are now required to replace all lead service lines over the next 20 years. So as you can imagine, that's a substantial amount of work and a substantial cost to these communities. So we use that information available from EGLE regarding the preliminary materials inventory to estimate, what the scale of that is in the county. So when we looked at that, there's probably about 29,000 service lines in the county that need to be replaced. And the cost to do that work is probably in the neighborhood of about $250 million. So it's a substantial need across the county. Next slide, please. Okay, so now we're going to dive into the city of Pontiac. So the city of Pontiac's water system is unique in that Oakland County owns the water system. Now, the other communities that we operate, we do that through an operations and maintenance agreement signed by the community and the county. In Pontiac, we own the water. The county owns the water system. So the Pontiac water system is an older water system. There's about 300 miles of water main, so it's a large system. But about half of that water main is at the end of its useful life. As the water main starts to age, we have other problems in the system. We have areas with low fire flooding. We have many main breaks. And one of the big challenges in the city of Pontiac is a lot of it is under the road. So when we do repairs or improvements, it's difficult and it's costly to do that. So in addition to the water system itself, Pontiac has lead service lines. There's about 19,000 service lines in the city, and about 40% or 8,000 of those are lead. So when you look at the map, the areas that are shaded in purple, those are parcels that are tied to a service line that we infer are made of lead. The yellow are unknown materials, and the green are probably not lead. Next slide, please. So how do we plan to address Pontiac's drinking water system? We know that the water mains are in need of replacement, and we know that there are lead service lines that need to be replaced. So what we are proposing is a comprehensive approach to address both at the same time. There's a level of scale that gets better there. When you have contractors working in the same area, it's better for customers. There's fewer disruptions, and it's more cost effective to go in, address the service line while you're replacing the water main and the road, as opposed to come in multiple times and to replace the same piece of pavement. So we zoomed here in on a particular area. So next year we'll be working in this particular area that's shaded in green on your map. That's our 2023 project area. So in that area, we're going to replace 2 miles of water main, and that's going to cost about $7 million. And we're also going to replace about 316 water services for an estimated cost of $2.5 million. So the neighborhood that we're working in there, that's about $9.5 million of work there. And we picked these areas to correspond to to prioritize with other areas in the system that need work. So we looked at the lead density. So when you looked at the previous map, you saw that this area had a very dense area of lead.
And it's the street I live
And then, so that's our comprehensive approach to replacing water mains with surface lines in the city of Pontiac. Next slide.
Wow.
Okay, so the cost of doing all this work is substantial. Water systems are funded through rates. That's how communities make improvements to their water systems. It's all funded through customer bills. So we have been actively looking for grant funding and other means to supplement community so that there's less cost to the ratepayers. We've been successful in several of those, as are listed here on the chart. But the real struggle for the city of Pontiac is related to affordability. So we reviewed customer bills and against the EPA's affordability guideline, and 37% of those bills in homes are above the affordability guideline. 32% of persons live in poverty, and 28.5% are above the federal poverty line. So as we look at the repairs that are needed in the system, $80 million for service line replacement, $300 million for water main replacement, costs are substantial. And customers can't afford any higher rates to make those changes. So to offset that, we have been looking at the funding. We have been successful. And we're here for the $5 million bond sale, principal forgiveness for water main replacement, for service line replacements. That's $5 million of the $80 million. And we are looking at additional opportunities as they come forward. We're working on an earmark. Congressman Lawrence's office, but they're small in comparison to the need of the overall system. Next slide, please. Oh, I'm sorry. Can we go back one? I forgot the affordability. I apologize. My apologies. All right. So one of the projects we wanted to bring to your attention was the affordability project that Mr. Mash mentioned earlier. So that's a $450,000 grant to look at affordability programs, especially for Royal Oak Township and for the city of Pontiac. So one of the questions that were sent in advance was related to affordability. So, what programs assist to help people with affordability? And WRC has a list available on our website at oakgov.com/affordability associated with the affordability project. And there's several. There's the Water Residential Assistance Program that provides a $25 bill discount to help with arrears, and they also have a plumbing program that's based on customer need and household income. There's the LIWAT program, which offers a one-time $650 arrears payment for qualifying households, and then there are other smaller programs, including STERA, State Relief, and then Michigan. The struggle are the gaps in these programs. So the gaps are that most of these programs provide a very limited payment for a short period of time. So RAP is limited to 2 years of assistance, $25 a month, and it's a one-time. You can opt out of the program for 2 years. So a statewide funding source is needed to implement for income-based assistance for water bills across the state. And then the question was asked, could we just do a water rate increase for all WRC customers to offset some of these costs? And unfortunately, that's not a legal option. We're not allowed to subsidize customer rates in another community by charging all communities more. So then, another question was asked, well, could we just charge customers more to offset these costs? And the problem then is that if you increase the rates, then you just have a greater portion that's unaffordable. So it's a really difficult situation, and we're working through that in the affordability project. I'm sorry, can you go to the next slide now, please? All right, another topic, a system that's very near and dear to our hearts is the Royal Oak Township water system. So this is another system that WRC operates. It's a very small water system, and it's in dire need of improvement. So the map, each one of those stars represents a water main break. So this community has been many, many water main breaks. It's old. It has poor fire flow. The residential water flow is expected to be about 1,000 gallons per minute for residential firefighting. 85% of this community has less than that, and 10% has less than half of it. The community was built between about 1924 and 1939, so it's old. There are no records or as-built drawings for the service line materials that were used, but based on the system, we believe that 700 of those service lines are lead or unknown. If we look at affordability in this water system, 57% of these customers have bills that are outside EPA's affordability guidelines. So the overall need for the rural Oak Township water system is $13 million to replace the majority of the water system. Next slide, please. All right, so this is our summary slide. Just to reiterate that drinking water is critical to customer health and safety. And we need to make improvements to our water systems to ensure that health and safety is protected. Water systems have many issues, including fire flows, main breaks, service disruption, and especially lead service lines. There are many areas where they cannot afford their current water bills, and they can't afford increases to those bills to make these improvements. Water systems are funded by rates, so we're looking for additional grant funding to support these improvements in water systems as they cannot afford to pay for any higher rates. So we thank you for your time and any questions.
We're just letting that breathe for a minute. 'Cause there's a lot to consider. Go for it.
Thank you for.
Was there anything else in terms of presentation on this particular item? And in the meantime, commissioners, if you had any questions, comments, thoughts, lamentations, they can start now.
Really,
Yes, Mr. Nash.
really quick, can I mention that, Amy, when you had that map of the communities that had violated, had been over the lead limit, that include White Lake. Now, as far as we know, White Lake has no lead leads, right?
Yeah.
So these are all in-home lead contacts. So I want you to be aware of that. There are no lead lines that we're aware of in White Lake. It was built as a system much later than they used to use them in. So what they're finding is in the home plumbing. Just want to make sure people understood.
Ms. Markham, and then Mr. Woodward, and then Mr. Cavell.
Yeah, this is more of a philosophical statement than anything. This is clearly an indication of our lack of investment over the years, and now it's kind of coming due to us. And, of all of our utilities, of all of the resources that are available to us, every single human on this planet needs water to live. And in these communities that are economically disadvantaged, partly because they're just old and it's expensive to change, I do feel like we have a responsibility to be as creative as possible to find ways to fix this, because everybody deserves clean water in their homes. Thank you.
Mr. Woodward.
Yeah, so I just want to make sure, did I hear this correctly? Is it estimated that it's $250 million to replace all the lead service lines in Oakland County, or just those under the jurisdiction or contracted with WRC?
Across the county.
Across the county, so even the ones that are not necessarily WRC infrastructure.
That's just service line.
That's correct.
And that's just the lead service line, right? Yeah, exactly. And the other infrastructure stuff is another thing. So with, on one level, obviously being able to get the labor to be able to do this. I know that there is a pretty, there's a 20-year runway to get this done. Is there value from an economies of scale perspective? And I'm just thinking out loud, bonding the capital to be able to do this and to accelerate it to get it done as quickly as possible, because by doing full, like large swaths, I mean, I guess intuitively, it seems like it will be cheaper per unit than spreading this out over a long period of time and with more expensive costs. So if we got a big chunk of resources to inject, does it save us money long-term? I guess that's also dependent. Is the labor force there able to complete this in 5 years across the county?
I can address that, Amy. We're talking across the county. That's a huge undertaking. In our office, we're looking at the communities we serve and the disadvantaged communities that have the majority of lead service lines to get the biggest bang for our buck for the resources that we have. I'm not so sure a county-wide initiative. Every community is in a different stage of identifying their lead service leads, and their rates come into play as well. Even a bond has increase in water rates, so that sensitivity has to be investigated as well. But our emphasis is on the disadvantaged communities that can't even afford some of the grant programs because there's a matching component to the grant program. So in Royal Oak Township, just the matching component to get a few $1,000,000 is prohibitive because the rates would go higher, and you saw the statistics on the income in that area. Pontiac's a larger system, but they still have issues with affordability. And again, that's where we're really pressing for grants instead of bonds, and pushing for principal forgiveness to the SRF program for these two communities.
No, and I definitely understand that. I mean, I also know that there's no other community that's going to get a lower interest rate than what we're able to accomplish through, our bonding capacity and our incredible credit. So, I think the answer is probably a mix. But I look at this to Commissioner Markham's point that, water is a priority. It's a principle. It's going to cost money. Whatever it's going to cost, we need to do it. We want to do it at the cheapest cost possible to get it done as quickly as possible. And we should probably be approaching a Marshall Plan investment. And I would argue like the bipartisan infrastructure bill is the largest investment and really the first big time investment in terms of from a water infrastructure purpose that this nation's ever undertook. And so. But I appreciate the insight in operating on finite resources. I think the approach you're outlining makes a lot of sense.
Mr. Cavell, followed by Mr. Spiz.
Yeah, Steve, first to what you were saying about Royal Oak Township, shout out to Commissioner Spiz for his help on making our own little bipartisan infrastructure thing happen with regards to Royal Oak Township. So Chair Woodward talked about the infrastructure bill. Some of you were mentioning state funds. Can you speak to what, if any, money Oakland County or WRC could be expecting to come in to help offset some of these infrastructure and affordability costs? Because I think we're all kind of circling the drain here, not to use a pun, of how we can use some of our ARPA money to be of service to these communities which we represent.
Yeah, I think that's something we want to explore, again, with your committee and county administration on the best way to procure, those ARPA funds. And certainly our priorities are with, just like Amy's presentation showed, with the disadvantaged communities. We do have a plan. Every year we want to invest, $7 to $10 to $12 million in these systems, in Pontiac anyway, for the lead replacement lines. But that's something, we have a meeting set up with county administration to speak to exactly that and how to approach requesting these funds. And that's something we can coordinate with your committee as well.
Okay. Do you have plans afoot for, can you share a little bit more about that? I know you did with this PowerPoint, but related to affordability in particular, because that seems like it'll be a sticking point. You can have new pipes, but if people still can't afford it.
Sure. I think the key for the disadvantaged communities is to secure funds that we don't have to bond or provide a match for. So there would be 100% grant funds. That's the most advantageous process we can use. So I think that's where we're going to be concentrating on. But the affordability program, that's something we're just writing up the final report. I think in the coming months we'll have a final report that outlines how a program would work in Pontiac and how a program would work in Royal Oak Township. And the key to the program is not necessarily to keep the rates low where we can't afford to fix things and do repairs, but to help the disadvantaged individual customers to provide the resources for them. And the best way to put it, Jim, I think is it's just like they have the heat and warmth fund for electricity and gas, so that those things don't get shut off. We're modeling our proposal along those same lines. Does that pretty much capture that, Jim? How we're chasing this?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We're looking to have this be done as a statewide effort. And I think hopefully that's why they gave us this grant, so we could develop something that would work on a statewide basis. You know, every community from the wealthiest to the poorest has people in those communities who have a real hard time paying their water bills. So whatever community you're in, you're going to have people on fixed incomes, young families who just are having a struggle. So when we're doing this, this will serve people in all the communities, and hopefully. And then the focus can be on the ones that have economic issues that they need to overcome. And again, both the ARP, well, I know the infrastructure fund, I'm not sure about the ARP, has, I think it was 40% set aside for economically disadvantaged communities. So this is specifically designed to help those communities. It's not just Oakland, Pontiac and Royal Oak Township. There's other communities down in the bottom of the county who struggle under those being able to pay bills. So they'll be able to hopefully be able to help with this too. We already have the RAP program from the Great Lakes Water Authority. We're looking at the program. Oh my gosh, I can't think of it. The LIHEAP, Low Income Household Water Assistance Program. That we want to combine those and see how we can help also the local communities contribute towards this. And so we're all working in that same direction from the state all the way down to basically the neighborhood. So that's how we want to kind of create this going forward.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Spence?
Before I make any comments, I do have a quick question. Is there a special, I'm gonna call it a study group, specific to lead lines, lead service lines, feed lines on right now that you guys are doing in the Water Resource Commission? Or is it as grants come up, you're attacking it at that point? Because I'm kind of building on what Commissioner Woodward said. Is there a strategic plan is really what I'm trying to get to. So I'm thinking if you guys have a group that's working on this, maybe we as a Board of Commissioners get a couple commissioners that would like to sit on that, because I believe there's some with the 21 of us that would like to sit there and kind of talk through this. Is that something you have today?
Not really. I mean, each individual community contracts for water with the Great Lakes Water Authority. So we don't really get involved except for the ones we operate and maintain directly for. And again, Pontiac is the one we actually own. So we're the most free to kind of work with that.
And understand it. So there's a lot of communities out there that you're probably not even looking at right now because they're on GLEWA, or they're on their own system, or they're somewhere else. Or just like you said about White Lake, they might not have any lead service lines, but some of those homes in there have some faucets or systems that are so archaic, they probably have lead either in the putty that they use to put the pipes together or somewhere else through the system. So to me, it's much bigger than just what you guys are looking at. So does it make sense to put some type of strategic plan together to understand what we need to do?
I would be very interested in doing that. I think that's something that we could work with, because all the communities are struggling with this.
Yeah,
and when we were talking about the lead and copper rule a few years ago, we had communities from all across the state, and especially in our region, really concerned about how they can do this without whacking the ratepayers too hard.
Yeah, and this is a long-term project. It's not something we're going to fix it. And being straightforward, I don't think you're going to fix this in 5 years. This is a long-term project, right? But
so I would be happy to work with you guys to do that. And again, it's only a subset of the communities in the county that would be involved, because a lot of them, I know, top and west part of the county don't even use this.
Right. So maybe Commissioner Woodward, we can talk outside of this and maybe come up with something. But my final point is from a financing perspective, and is in how to attack this project is, I would think we need to be thinking a little bit more outside of the box. Don't just assume we're going to go in and dig up a line and replace it. There's got to be other ways we can do some of this that are a lot more cost effective, efficient from a time perspective and dollar perspective.
Well, we're
And-
mandated to, though.
I understand, we're mandated to, but
Right,
to
right.
me, we need to think outside of that box. There's a way we can do something a little differently, and maybe we can go back to the state and say, okay, how about we address this, because everybody's gonna be different, right? How about we address this area this way, this area that way? You know, in some cases, just, I'm gonna throw something out there just crazy. You know, maybe in some communities, it's cheaper just to buy the house and the property versus replacing everything in that community. And say, okay, we'll buy your home. You guys can take that money and go buy a different home somewhere else, and then they're out of the lead issue and they're good to go. And then we just, eventually, if you get enough of plot of a land, you sell it to a developer and you move on, and they redevelop the whole thing. I mean, just an idea thrown out there, it just
Creative.
spitball.
I got you.
Let's be a little more creative in how we're doing, just instead of taking a crane in there, digging a hole, taking the old pipe out and put a new pipe in. There's gotta be other ways to do this stuff.
And I mean, to that point, and I think you're right, and Commissioner Nash and I have talked about this. I mean, this is, something I was like very bullish, and even working with our health department, that lead, concentration of lead, higher than safety level of lead, particularly in children, especially in these less economically strong areas. The lead service line, while it might be a contributing factor, it historically is not the main factor. I mean, you've got lead paint and other, a host of other things. And so from a public health perspective, is really looking at all of this. And where there's lead paint, there's almost guaranteed to have lead pipes inside the house, and then you connect it to a lead service line. And so, I think you're right. I think it's a global thing. The other thing, and I think Steve did this really well. Different communities are different places. Some look at it like, this is very expensive. We've got 20 years to figure this out, so we're going to take a much more slow, protracted effort. Some say, I only have a handful here. Let's get this done, be done with it, never have to deal with it again. And so getting everyone on the same page is, I think, one of the biggest challenges. But I love the idea of pulling people together, figure out how we're going to tackle this and be creative.
Otherwise, it's gonna be a year 18 and we're not gonna be able to do that.
Yeah.
You know, when Birmingham discovered they had exceeded the lead level, I think they did it really quick. And again, because they only had a few, they didn't have very many, so they did their program very fast. Again, a lot of communities, Farmington Hills, there are no lead lines in that city. So it's very, you just don't know which cities are going to will be part of this. I'm thinking maybe 15, 20 cities, and beyond that, it won't be that many more. So again, it wouldn't be really hard to run a best practices kind of generating system that way.
Jim, I could provide some additional information. I think the county's critical infrastructure planning grant program will really shed some light, because a lot of the communities that our office is recommending the committee consider for this grant program have in their application this identification of lead service leads and coming up with a plan and a program. So I think we've recommended 21 awards to 21 communities, and a substantial portion of that has to deal with lead service lines. So we're on our way in the planning part of the program.
Nice.
Okay, thank you.
This is Sid Lockhart. You can hear me?
Sort of.
Broke up a little bit. Go ahead, Sid. Sid from my office.
Yeah, in my prior life, I was a master plumber before I became an engineer. And just one thing to keep in mind, you're talking to the state, is these weren't part of the public system, part of the state and national building codes when they got installed. They're approved material back in the day. So then it's really the government higher than us created, and now they're jamming it to us to fix it. So you're talking to them, keep that as a backdrop when we're trying to get money to fix these things, because they're on the private side. And there is a piece, and to your question, Amy has more answers to this than I do, but we do have contractors that have innovative ways of threading a line through the service line, grabbing on the other end and like a cable and pulling it through. Another one, there's different creative ways of doing that we're already attacking them in this manner. The issue is you have to still dig holes out in the stop box in the street, and there still is the piece of line that's between the stop box and the main. That's not the private line that may be lead. There's that to contend with also, and lines end up under the roads. And so you also have to fix the roads when dealing with this issue. And to Commissioner Woodward's point about attacking it earlier than later, one thing about these things, the later you wait, the cost never comes down. There's labor, supply chain, and waiting later just costs more. So the earlier you tackle it, the better. This issue goes back to affordability, where we need more grant money for Royal Oak Township, Pontiac versus loan.
Sid, there's one other thing too. A lot of the programs for lead service line replacement, excellent programs, but they don't address, in a lot of the cases we see, the water line in the street. If you remember that Royal Oak Township map with all those main breaks, you can imagine having a program where we get funding to replace lead service lines, but then we have to tie it into a water main and meet this. Is literally falling apart and breaking. And the most economical way to address these situations is replace the water main in the street at the same time as lead service lines. But the funding structure isn't always there. And that's another huge challenge in these disadvantaged communities or these older communities. And that adds significantly to the cost of just replacing lead service lines, because in many circumstances, you want to replace the water main in the street. It's at the end of its useful life, and the condition dictates that. And so it's most economical to do it at the same time. And it's also less disruption for the neighborhood and the residents. You come in once, you come in twice, you tear up roads. It's something we're trying to get our arms around, and that's why we're just taking it a piece at a time and doing what we can with the funding we get.
Yeah, that's a great point. And that's a big SREP program. They don't go back to the water main. And it really needs to be a holistic approach, especially in older communities where it's all patches versus main. There's more patches in places than main that Amy can attest to. The Royal Oak Township especially.
Well, we appreciate that in-depth discussion. Colleagues, your questions were very helpful. I think the only thing I wanted to highlight as we proceed is it's a wild shot, if you will, but it does look like Pontiac is considered to be inside of Opportunity Zone. I know that is technically a housing piece, but something tells me, if we're thinking creatively, that these investors, people who are trying to shore up those capital gains, who are making investments, perhaps there's just some conversations to be had there in terms of outside the box. The other thing I wanted to make sure that was lifted, you had mentioned in your report, Water Commissioner, or maybe Ms. Plouffe, about the oakgov.com/affordability. And so I took a second to hop over there, and for those listening who might be in these communities of Pontiac or Royal Oak Township, there's help in terms of water residential assistance, low-income household water assistance, COVID emergency rental assistance. We all know about SIR, or State Emergency Relief, and dare I say, Enbridge. Like, it pains me to even speak that name, but there's a Fueling Future Water Assistance program that they even have. So anyone who seems to be having any trouble with their water, the oakgov.com/affordability website is the place to go. So I just want to make sure that was articulated. And with that, we can prompt the vote, or I need a motion to receive and file.
So moved.
There we are. Six yeas, 0 nays, motion carried. They say that you can tell what's important to people by how long they take on that issue on an agenda. So we took literally like an hour and a half on water because it's that important. Moving along, though, that takes us into consent agenda, where for those of you who may not pay close attention to our meetings don't know, but consent agenda is used in cases where there are resolutions with agreements that have similar language but need separate resolutions for each. So with that, is there a motion to
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Support.
Moved and supported. Let's prompt the vote.
You have 6 yeas, 0 nays?
6 yeas, 0 nays, motion carried. Moves us into the regular agenda. We have I'll take a motion to open report 9A, road improvement, I'm sorry, wrong letter. 10A, Water Resource Commissioner interlocal agreement with the Village of Leonard to maintain the stormwater drainage and catch basin system.
I'll move it.
Moved Supported by Commissioner Woodward. And
Good morning.
good morning. Give us your name and
I'm
affiliation.
John Bash. I'm one of the attorneys at the Water Resources Commissioner's Office. Getting this?
Thank you.
It's for the people at home on TV.
So actually, I usually attend these meetings remotely. I had a glitch with my computer this morning, so I get a chance to share with you today in person. Thank you. So you've had several of these agreements come before the board previously. The only difference between this one and the ones you've already approved is this one is a little bit smaller. Rather than an operation component to an operation and maintenance agreement, this is just maintenance. Primarily, it's just cleaning some of the catch basins and pipes in the village of Leonard. We were asked to look at their system and see if we can do it for them more economically than they can do it themselves. As you heard in the presentation, this is part of the economics of scale. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Any
I
questions?
don't have any questions, just thank you for coming in, and I'm full support of this.
Is there any further discussion on this item?
And just, it's revenue neutral and no
That is
cost, no
correct.
cost to general fund.
Absolutely.
Excellent question, Mr. Weipert. Seeing no further questions, let's prompt the vote.
You have 6 yeas, 0 nays?
6 yeas, 0 nays, motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Takes us into item 10B under the regular agenda, Water Resource Commissioner Resolution declaring Oakland County as a designated water town. Need a motion? Yes,
I'll move it.
Madam, Ms. Markham and Mr. Cavell. All right. Lynn Seymour, I believe, and Aaron might be on the call. Yeah, Aaron Cattell. And if you wouldn't mind just making sure to state your name and a little bit about the presentation today.
Lynn Seymour, I'm a chief engineer at the Water Resources Commissioner's Office. I was going to have Ann Barra do some opening remarks. She was actually the creator of Watertown when she was at the Clinton River Watershed Council, so I thought she could give a great background on the program for us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn, and thank you, committee. Ann Barr, Chief Deputy Water Resource Commissioner. I've been with the county now for 5 years, but prior to this, I was the executive director for the Clinton River Watershed Council for about 9.5. And yes, we did create water towns when I was in that position about 10 years ago. We did it primarily as a way to connect, help communities connect themselves with their water resources. And so the easy choices were to find communities right along the river that could relate to the river in many different ways through recreation, education, history, ecology, and the environment. And it was a very, very successful program and still is. It was started with a watershed planner at the Watershed Council and also with funding from the Herb Family Foundation, and that continues today. Beyond those communities along the river, then we sort of started looking for communities outside of the direct river drainage because, as we know, water connects everybody in some way. And so we started spreading out through Oakland County and Macomb County from there. When I was there, I had never considered a county being a water town until now. And in my position now, working closely with Lynn Seymour and Aaron Cattell, and other departments, including Parks and Rec and FM&O, it just made really good sense to have Oakland County come aboard as a water town. And I see Chris Bobrick is on. He's the current watershed planner at the Watershed Council. I just wanted to take a few minutes to tell you what a great program this is. I have a lot of passion for this. It's a win-win for everybody. It's a feel-good program, and there's a lot of tremendous opportunity for us to connect with not only our departments, but also individuals and people affected by this program. So with that, I'm going to turn it back to Lynn. Thank you.
Thanks, Ann. And I also wanted Erin to speak on it. You know, we've been working with Erin quite a bit since she became the sustainability officer. We meet quarterly to sort of coordinate on issues and things we can do as a county. And Erin, when she was with Ferndale, was part of the Watertown program. So I thought maybe she could give a little perspective from her point of view.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. Erin Quattel, Environmental Sustainability Officer for Oakland County. You know, this is just another program that is connected to sustainability. It offers a lot of resources and support for integrating green stormwater practices and really just thinking about our infrastructure a little bit differently. You know, when we use this in the city of Ferndale, it was pretty exciting because there was a lot of different ways to integrate green infrastructure that we didn't think about or maybe didn't have the expertise to really design and consider. And so this program allowed us to look at our parking lots, for example, places along 9 Mile, areas in other right-of-ways and even in parks to identify potential areas. So this would be just another opportunity for Oakland County to be a leader in that and support this great program. I honestly can't say how much I like this program enough. And I think that it's really smart and strategic for us to partner since a lot of our communities have already participated in this. I could gush and, you know, nerd out even more, but I think I'll stop there.
Ann, can you kind of mention how many communities are involved? I mean,
Thanks, Erin.
where the
So,
communities are?
Yeah, Jim, I was just thinking about that. Chris Bobrick is on. I'm not sure what the total count of communities is right now, but maybe Chris could answer that question. I know it's got to be 15 or maybe more.
I can speak to that too. If I don't know if Chris has those numbers available. I know that we have at least 15 Oakland County communities that are part of the Watertown program, and overall, like close to 30 that are within the entire project, the entire program. So, you know, we'd be joining, you know, great company within the watershed with the communities already part of it. And, you know, our county has, you know, 5 watersheds. So Clinton River is only a part of it. And so to have 15 communities within Oakland County already part of the Watertown program, I think just stresses how great of a program it is and how important it is to the communities within it.
Thank you.
It's one of those things local communities can really learn a lot and apply it to their own communities where they might not have been able to do that before, as Erin said. So this is a terrific way for communities to really help keep their own communities healthy. And I think the response will be very, very strong. So.
So in particular, what we're looking for today is a resolution from the board to support Oakland County becoming a water town. And by doing that, we'll have the Clinton River Watershed Council support to look in depth to one or more sites that the county chooses to look at opportunities for green infrastructure and other environmental benefits, some placemaking and things like that. So we'll be working with Erin, with the other departments like FMNO and Parks to sort of see what sites make the most sense for utilizing this program and really trying to drive green infrastructure at county properties.
If I may add one thing to that too, Lynn, is that, you know, the program does offer a lot of technical assistance and technical support. So it really drills down to how much water is going to be mitigated, the type of technologies or type of solutions to integrate, as well as a cost benefit analysis on what that actually means to your community. So in very real time, you'll be able to put some numbers to exactly how many gallons of stormwater are mitigated, what the financial implications for that is, and, you know, those other kind of co-benefits that are associated with green infrastructure, such as habitat creation, pollinator locations and native plantings and so forth.
Great. Thank you, guys. Mr. Wilbur, did you have something?
Yeah, I think this is incredible. We were talking about the importance of green infrastructure. Here's, a way to bring additional technical expertise here to help, guide what we're talking about. When we talk about adding a lane of road, that potentially contributes to thousands of gallons and more into the drain infrastructure, which, at risk of ending in basements. And so all of this works towards, and I think Aaron said it well, I mean, the cost-benefit analysis of looking into the future, making the strategic investments, thinking differently to build a more resilient and climate-conscious communities. And I think, and the Herb Foundation's headquartered in my district, and I've actually talked to some of them because I've been want them to do even more. And so I think this is the appetizer for the entree for the big ask. So looking forward to
What
it.
does that mean?
Right.
It's always a big ask.
Is there food? That's all I want to know. All right, great. Yes, Mr. Wyper.
And likewise, there's no financial commitment on the part of the county to do this, and no budget amendment required. So it's just benefit of the expertise.
Correct. There's no financial commitment to the county. Depending on, could look at, if we want to take it above and beyond, but at this point, the county would have no contributing funds.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
All right, thank you for bringing this in front of us, and I will be supporting it, but I do have some general questions just to make sure I get a bigger picture of this. Is Macomb County part of it right now? Have they joined as a county? No, okay. Because that was kind of my own question. From an Oakland County perspective, because I saw the list of all the other communities, I went and looked at the website and looked at everything, and just trying to understand how, as a county, would we help, I'm going to say help in this endeavor, but I think, Lynn, I think you answered that. We're going to be looking at county properties and county sites that we could potentially help and use this program for. My other question is have any of the other watersheds, because I think, Ann, you mentioned it's been out there for 20 years-ish, something like that, 15 years this program's been out there. Have any of the other watersheds taken advantage of this program? And by the county joining, does that mean we can push it out to them also to participate in this?
So if I may, this is a trademark program to the Clinton River Watershed Council. The Huron Rivershed Council has a similar program called River Up. It's not as a community focused. Their program is more river focused in spots along the river. This program actually brings in the potential for all communities, whether you're directly connected to a river or not. So that's why we set this program up this way, so all communities could benefit. Friends of the Rouge does not have a program like this, but they do have programs zeroing in on master rain gardeners in creating a rain garden potential for communities, within their own communities and along the river. So this program is unique to the Clinton River Watershed Council.
Thank you.
Well, all right, we're going to bring this particular item to a vote. Let us prompt the vote for item 10B, Water Resource Commissioner Resolution declaring Oakland County as a designated water town.
You have 6 yeas, 0 nays.
6 yeas, 0 nays, motion carried. We will move into item 10C. With respect to the time, we will want to keep our questions and comments succinct. That way, all the other business that we have to do today.
Your key way to say, speed up a little bit.
Yeah, I'm taking Gwen's lead from last finance meeting where she wanted us to move it, keep it moving. So if I get a motion to open report 10C.
So moved.
I'll support it for discussion.
Great. With that, let's hear from, I believe, Kristen and Ingrid. Okay, hi, Kristen. Please introduce yourself and a little bit about the item.
Yes, good morning, Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to address the committee today. My name is Kristen Wilping. I'm the Administrator of Trails, Transportation, and Environment within the Planning and Local Business Development Division of the Economic Development Department. But I would like to bring before you today the Clinton River Trail Safety and Maintenance Improvement request for appropriation of funds for $120,000 from the American Rescue Plan. The Clinton River Trail is a 16-mile rail trail trail that follows the old Grand Trunk Railroad. It goes through the 5 cities of Sylvan Lake, Pontiac, Auburn Hills, Rochester Hills, and Rochester. It's also part of the Great Lake to Lake Trail Route 1, which is a trail that goes across the state. It starts in South Haven on Lake Michigan. It goes all the way across the state to Port Huron over on Lake Huron. So this opportunity to improve a 1.75-mile stretch of trail in the city of Pontiac is a great opportunity, and we've been working with the Friends of the Clinton River Trail, City of Pontiac, and City of Sylvan Lake on this project since 2000. So there's a great opportunity right now to provide the last remaining funds for a $726,000 project total. We'll be improving the surface. We'll bring it up to state and federal standards and guidelines, because when it was done originally in 2004, it did not have those same restrictions and guidelines that we had to meet. So we need to bring it up to code. This project was competitively bid last fall through the city of Pontiac. And it's a great opportunity to address some of our disproportionately impacted populations within the city. So I'd be happy to answer any questions. I know we're running short on time. There is a map in your packet of the project.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I do have two people on deck, Mr. Spiz, followed by Mr. Weipert.
Is this project time sensitive?
Very much so, yes. It's currently under construction. We've been working on this ARP request for appropriation since July of 2021.
All right, reason I asked that question, I've been a big supporter of trails for probably 20 years plus. And I necessarily don't have an issue with this project per se in general. I'm just wondering why, from a county perspective, we're not putting a larger program out there for ARPA funds to do trails across the county. If we're going to do it just for this one project, why aren't we doing a grant program like we've done in many other areas for all the other trails throughout our great county? We got the Paint Creek up in my area that's out there that I'm sure they could use monies to do upgrades and maintenance to. And I'm sure there's other trails down in the south that would have the same thing. So why are we earmarking only $170,000 for this program or this project and not putting other opportunities out there for other districts in our community? That's my big question. And I don't know, Kristen, that's probably not directed towards you. It's probably.
Well, I think Weipert was next, and just out of respect to the order.
I had that concern too, but on this one, you're redoing some ADA, right? The ADA portions were from the old days where they weren't appropriate, and they didn't even have the high-intensity lights back when it was first approved, right? So that stuff's all going to be a part of this program?
Yep.
Okay.
Oh, Mr. Woodward.
So, just to make sure that everyone knows that, Kristen is, the most knowledgeable person I know on trails, from a countywide perspective and beyond, and we're really fortunate to have her. And I think to Commissioner Spiz's point, I think nothing would be more exciting. I think this is a little bit, there's an opportunity here, that's why we're kind of jumping at it. Also part of our parks millage, that one thing that, myself, I know Commissioner McGilvery and Commissioner Long and others, that we made certain that was baked in when we increased the millage, that a dedicated funding stream to help build out, and especially to help fund, and Kristen, correct me if I'm wrong, one of the hardest parts to get trails moving forward is that front end stuff, because everyone wants to plant the tree or clear the path, but no one wants to do the planting. And so maybe that, something thinking through when the planning stuff, and we definitely can be looking at that going forward. I'm open to it. I know that Kristen would have no problem looking for opportunities to invest more to build out. I was at a State of the County address, and I heard that we're building 400 miles of trails. So let's start building. So,
well, I know I'm sorry.
Microphone.
As Commissioner Woodward said, Novi got one of the new grants from the millage, and it was specifically for a new park and to plan and build the trails for that park. So just a data point.
Yes, Mr. Spiz, and I believe Ingrid Ty has a comment.
And all great points, and the Parks Millage, I know a lot of communities got some of those grant funding. It just, when I saw this, I was just thinking, we're taking this small piece of ARPA, I'm gonna call it small piece of ARPA money. I know $100 and something thousand not always small, but when we have $244 million of ARPA money coming our way, you know, I think we could think a little bigger and help our communities. And I think we all believe from an economic development perspective, trails are important. From a health perspective, trails are important. You know, it's something that will help drive each of those communities, and they should all be able to take advantage of some of the ARPA monies that we have. And just as we've done with many other programs here through this commission with the ARPA monies we have, is let's get a bigger bang for our buck. Let's put some matching grant funds out there for these communities to take advantage of it if they so decide to go down this path.
Ms. Ty?
Thank you.
Yes. Okay, make sure it's on. I just wanted to address Commissioner Spiz. So absolutely agree. One thing in regards to this specific project, it is time sensitive, so that's why we had to move this more quickly through the pipeline. In terms of a comprehensive approach, absolutely agree. Actually, Kristen and her team have done some analysis on other projects where we could have a more macro level comprehensive approach. The other piece of that too, though, is that not only do we have ARP funding, but let's be strategic in terms of leveraging our dollars. There's a lot of foundation money out there right now for these types of projects. The state with the Department of Natural Resources and the trust fund. So I think if we're really thoughtful and strategic, we can put this together and get many different groups to come together, leverage those funds, and be more impactful. So absolutely agree, and that's something we want to work on.
Wonderful. Seeing no further comment on this particular item, let's prompt the vote, and that is to recommend and forward to finance.
You have 6 yeas and 0 nays.
6 yeas, 0 nays, motion carried. Let's open for recommendation and forwarding to finance Report 10D, the Board of Commissioners resolution appropriating American Rescue Plan Act local fiscal recovery funds for broadband feasibility study. And I believe our presenter is Gwen Markham.
I'll support it.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, thank you. So broadband is one of the 6 categories of ARPA funding that we are trying to figure out how to manage. And this request is for $1 million for us to do a feasibility study in our county as to what the needs are, where the broadband access is, what kind of service is out there. There is a report that has been generated by the state of Michigan. They hired an organization called Connect Michigan, I think. And it's been publicized in a lot of different places that they are looking at all of Michigan to figure out what our broadband status is. Turns out that does not include our county as part of that. And the reason is because our county is more dense, and we do have a lot of broadband access across the county that has been built up as the communities grew and so on. But it's some communities have really solid broadband, others it's very spotty. So this feasibility study, it's up to $1 million. It's to really do that study within our county. We are also working across the boundaries with Macomb and Wayne County on the Tri-County Summit to see if there's some economies of scale we can get, or generally look at our region in terms of what we have and where we're going. This is specifically for Oakland County, but I just wanted to throw that out there, that we are trying to understand how we fit and where we fit and what we need. So that's why we're doing this.
Is there any further discussion on this item? Mr. Spiz?
I do have a couple questions. One, first off, I fully support this. This is something that I know the previous administration, going years back, has pushed to try to get a countywide broadband system in place. It's something that we have not been able to do over the last decade plus. I think it even got more important once our kids went home to try to do homeschooling for a while there during the unfortunate times of COVID. And now with all the work from home people trying to do it also in some of the remote areas, it becomes even more difficult for some of them to work from home because they do not have good broadband access, because there are big holes within this county. With that being said, you mentioned the Tri-County Summit. Is Macomb and Wayne doing the same thing, or are we leading the curve on this?
We, this is just for Oakland County.
Agree, but I'm just wondering, are they putting the same thing in for their ARPA monies to do the same things in their communities?
We're meeting with them again tomorrow. We've met twice. Phil Commissioner Weipert and I are on that committee together. We met with Nahid Hook from SEMCOG last week. And what they are suggesting, they have a $50,000 grant that they're going to make available, and they're recommending that all 3 of the counties each apply for that $50,000 grant to supplement this kind of activity. So I don't know exactly where Macomb and Wayne are. I think we're still very early in the talking stages, if Commissioner Weipert wants to add anything to that. Because I think we're kind of still in the where are we at phase, right?
To answer your question, I think we are in the lead on this, which is typical with Oakland County. And as part of the infrastructure coming down, there's billions of dollars going to the states for broadband, and that's going to be allocated to all the states, and we want to be ready to apply for that money.
Right.
Right. That money's coming.
Similar to what we've done on the other program.
Yeah.
Mr. Woodward.
Yeah, and I think what this resolution does is appropriate the money to allow an RFP to go out to figure this out. I wouldn't be surprised that once a vendor is selected that you would see a Macomb and a Wayne maybe jump on, and bring resources to do the same or or at least complement what we're doing. I think that makes a lot of sense. My only question, and this is maybe more appropriate for finance to take this up in your next meeting, is do we, and I think it makes sense for economic development and the executive to, and we work through the purchasing the RFP, review, and then select a vendor. Do we want that contract to come back before this committee or you?
Meaning
once the vendor's selected,
finance or
to release the funds.
Broadband group.
Just come back here.
Yeah, just have it come back here.
Okay, we might want to consider an amendment in finance. You don't need to do it here.
Okay.
Before the
'cause
release of
this'll
these
be on
funds.
finance agenda.
It'll be right. Yeah.
Mr. Cavell?
Yeah, that was my question too, because the reporting the executive will send a report detailing expenditures when that happens, which feels a lot different, having the board's prerogative for holding the purse strings. So yeah.
I think an amendment is being drafted that will be ready at finance.
Great, love it. Teamwork. Is there any more discussion on this item? Seeing none, let's prompt the vote to recommend and forward to finance.
Six yeas, 0 nays.
Excellent. 6 yeas, 0 nays, motion carried. I'll entertain a motion to recommend to the board item 10E under regular agenda, Board of Commissioners Road Improvement Fiscal Year 2022, appropriation for the local road improvement program.
I'll move it.
Mr. Weipert moved, Mr. Cavell supports. And who's bringing some background on this? Michael, always a pleasure. Come on up.
Hello, Commissioners. So the local road improvement program began in 2016 by the Board of Commissioners, and this is now the, sixth year that the program has been undertaken, and between each of those 6 years, money has been assigned or appropriated through the budget, and for fiscal year 2022, and back in 21, with MR 21378, we appropriated $2 million to go towards the program year for 2022. Really quick, 35 of the local communities that are eligible, of the 40 that are eligible, actually submitted applications to utilize the funding. It came out to $1.969 million of the $2 million, about roughly 98% of that will be utilized or requested for release with this resolution. The $30,000 that's left over will be a carry forward request into the next fiscal year if we appropriate more funding for this program in fiscal year 2023. So that will kind of be then reallocated to communities again, so they can take part of the program. So again, this resolution just requests that we release the funding and approve the cost participation agreement for those communities who have applied. Luckily, we have actually 3 of the commissioners that sit on the Local Road Improvement Special Committee that have approved the applications with us here today. And if they have anything else to say, that's basically the background to it.
One cool,
Mr. Whiteford, then Mr.
I
Cavell.
sit on the committee, and let me tell you, and I can't believe it's already 6 years that we've been doing this, but over time, hearing from the communities, they really, every city has really appreciated, or village has really appreciated this. It's a compliment to the tri-party program, which helps the townships and the municipalities of the cities and the villages really appreciate this program, so.
I just wanted to say, we had a new community join in this year and asking for and receiving funding, Lake Angeles. So look at that.
Nice. Well, if there's no further discussion on this item, we can prompt the vote. That is to recommend to the board.
Thanks for taking the heat, Mike.
You have 5 yeas, 0 nays.
Oh, okay. Motion carries.
If I have a personal privilege, I want to commend Commissioner McGilvery, who has made this, I for many years, pounded my head against the wall until we got this done, and we got it done. So, 6 years ago.
Great.
And I have the bruises to show it.
Well, it's always important to recognize.
It's a flat spot.
We are almost done with our agenda. I will, so that motion carried, and we'll entertain a motion to open the Report 10F, Board of Commissioners Resolution for the Cost Participation Agreement with local cities, villages, and townships for the allocation of the 2022 Oakland County Invasive Moth Lymantria dispar program funding. Mr. Spiz moved, and Ms. Markham supported. Great. Mr. Spiz.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In front of you today, we are asking for the final approval to disperse the monies to the communities that decided to participate in this grant program. Our cost is $69,000 to Oakland County. We originally allocated $250,000, so we did get 6 communities that decided to participate. I was hoping for much more, but being year 1, I would hope that we could roll over the remainder of that $250,000 to next year's budget and continue the program to hopefully get more communities to get involved in the future.
Does that require any amendments or anything for that rollover? Okay.
That's a different animal.
Any further discussion on this item? Seeing none, let's prompt the vote.
You have 6 yeas, 0 nays.
6 yeas, 0 nays, motion carries. Thank you, everyone. That takes us into the final item on regular agenda, 10G, Economic Development. I'll entertain a motion to open Economic Development Resolution appropriating funding for the Advanced Manufacturing Hub designation to Automation Alley. Mr. Woodward moved, Mr. Spiz supports, and I thought I saw Deputy Carlson. While they're coming,
They're here.
I do want to say that the majority of this Economic Development Committee was at the Economic Outlook luncheon the other day. So that goes to show our commitment to what we do at this table. So I'm very happy about that.
So we do have presenters somewhere.
I think so.
Dave's looking for him.
They're here.
Here he is. He's coming.
We're charging you by the minute.
Gypsy moths.
I know.
Everybody was interested. They didn't talk.
We've hashed that out now. Gypsy moth.
We have eradicated the gypsy moth.
Welcome, and please state your name and give a brief statement about the item.
Yes, thank you very much for taking up this matter today. My name is Sean Carlson, the Deputy County Executive, overseeing economic development, IT, and management budget areas. Today, I'm in front of you in regards to the resolution that you have in front of you. And joining me is Tom Kelly, the Executive Director for Automation Alley. What's in front of you is a designation for Automation Alley to be the U.S. Center for Advanced Manufacturing. So we may want to change the title and also the first, now therefore be it resolved. It says for the establishment of Advanced Manufacturing Hub. We want to say for the establishment of the U.S. Center for advanced manufacturing. So I just want to point that out. That was an oversight on my part, no one
The amendment
internally. so-
is being drafted. so-
Okay, all right.
So when it comes
Thank
to
you.
finance, that'll all be fixed.
So what I want to just open this up and then turn it over to the Executive Director for Automation Alley, Mr. Kelly, is this is a unique opportunity, as I think many board members know around the table. Automation Alley was created in 1999 by the Patterson administration. And part of that was to protect the manufacturing base here in Oakland County. It was birthed out of Oakland County as an entity. And as you all are very aware, between 2000 and 2010, we experienced, excuse me.
Yeah,
Is everything
we do.
okay over there? on
We
the
do
left?
want to make sure that the audience is not interfering.
Okay.
Ms. Kennedy? The gallery, the audience isn't to interrupt the proceedings of the business.
I didn't realize that was.
Yeah, definitely a distraction. Proceed, Mr. Carlson.
All right, so anyways, 2010 experienced, as everybody knows, a serious decline in manufacturing and manufacturing jobs and so forth. Probably would have been worse here in Oakland County and Southeast Michigan, but for Automation Alley's work that they've been doing ever since then. They have over 1,500 members now statewide, and 500 of those members are here in Oakland County. So I want to turn it over to Mr. Kelly to explain a little bit more about this resolution and what you have in front of you, and then I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Commissioners. So, as you know, Automation Alley was formed in 1999 by Brooks Patterson as a branding mechanism because we were known as the Rust Belt. In fact, through the 2000s, the joke, which infuriated me, was last one out of Michigan, turn out the lights, right? We went through a very painful period because China was coming on board as a great manufacturing power. And because it was a labor equation, we didn't have many resources to battle against that. And we kind of lost our entire machine tool industry and many other industries in the process. And it was very painful. Today, we're faced with another threat in manufacturing, and it's called the Fourth Industrial Revolution. The first was steam. The second we created in Michigan, which was Henry Ford, created the assembly line. And that second industrial revolution created great wealth for Michigan. And we invested that wealth in manufacturing. The third revolution is when we applied robots and computers to those manufacturing technologies, so we were able to continue our wealth creation. What's happening in the fourth revolution is the digitization of everything and the democratization and distribution of manufacturing. Manufacturing is shifting. People are not aware of this. It's shifting from very heavy capital-intensive industry that's tooled up to make one part perfectly efficiently and lean as possible anywhere, somewhere in the world, to being 3D printed manufacturing that is distributed and will be localized. The U.S. is about to embark on a revolution where manufacturing is going to come back to the U.S. because we import more than we export. And so if manufacturing relocalizes around the world, it's going to come back to the United States. It is not a conclusion that it will come back to Michigan, because Michigan's economy and manufacturing is built around supply chains that are designed to make one thing really well. And so culturally, that's where we're established. And what we need to do is shift our culture, which is the hardest thing to do. It's not a technology problem. It's a cultural problem. We need to shift our culture so that we embrace this distributed manufacturing mentality. And that we'll talk about in Project Diamond, which will come up at some other point, what we did for Oakland County already. But the second thing we need to do is we can begin to change our culture and get our small manufacturers to band together and behave as big manufacturers, because once you're all banded together, you can behave as a very large entity. We need the world to pay attention. Today, the World Economic Forum is a membership organization where the big manufacturers come together to talk about issues that affect the global manufacturing community. There is no World Economic Forum Center for Advanced Manufacturing. Automation Alley has been building a relationship with the World Economic Forum and its members for many years. we are at the point where they are willing to designate Automation Alley as the U.S. Center for Advanced Manufacturing. It's designated as the U.S. Center, but it is the only manufacturing center for the World Economic Forum. If we can change our culture and begin to build all these small manufacturers that can band together to behave as large manufacturers, we need a megaphone on the world stage to trumpet what we have done. So we have a two-pronged strategy at Automation Alley. One is to build this Project Diamond community so that we can democratize manufacturing. It's going to democratize on its own, whether we like it or not. But to democratize and distribute manufacturing and make sure we own that future. And then we also need to make sure we have a giant megaphone, because manufacturing is a global business. And if we can do those two things, we can re-energize our manufacturing and we can really own the future. So that's what Automation Alley exists to do. We are proud to be in Oakland County. We've been here our entire lives. We are a nonprofit. We are not in it for profit. It's all based on making sure our small manufacturers survive and thrive. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'll start with Commissioner Spiz.
Thank you.
Couple points. From my perspective, Industry 4.0 is much bigger than just the 3D printing. The digitization is much
Agreed.
much bigger
Agreed.
than that. 3D printing is a small portion of that, in my opinion, but it does help the small manufacturers. By the way, I'm fully on board with this. Based on I work in the auto industry during the day, I'm seeing this play out in real life. Everybody's pushing for Industry 4.0. Everybody's going down this path, and we need to pull our small manufacturers and our small businesses along with them, because the big guys are just going to take over if we don't do that. My only request here is another amendment to the resolution is reports. I'd like to hear more information back from Automation Alley, back from this project. So if we can get either you both to come back in on a quarterly basis, send us a quarterly report, something so we understand the status of where this $3 million is going, how it's benefiting the taxpayers of Oakland County, et cetera, et cetera. So I would ask for that, and maybe we can add that to the amendment you're bringing into finance. So, and the other thing I'd like to add is I'm not sure everybody on the Board of Commissioners is fully aware of what Automation Alley does, or has actually been out there to see it. So I would also recommend if we could set up a date to get some of the Board of Commissioners out there so they can see what you guys actually do.
I would love to do
Yes.
that.
So
Sean
that
will
is another
work on that.
Thank you.
Mr. Woodward?
So, Mr. Kelly and Mr. Carlson, I don't know if I've ever met someone who can make manufacturing as cool as you. And bring that level of excitement to literally. This is a big bleeping deal. In terms of, and I've heard you talked about it, Sean talked about it, talked to our mom and pop manufacturers, that if the Great Recession didn't knock you down, and if you're still standing after the pandemic, that the only way is to make this transition to Industry 4.0 and be able to harness, the democratization of manufacturing. If we Oakland County was building things here, Metro Detroit was building things here, Michigan was building things here, to be able to allow for smaller manufacturers to collectively, jointly, with the same level of precision that these big giant conglomerates building one part, to be able to flip between things. You want to fast forward to the ability for, this technology lends itself that things could be created in garages to help meet world demand orders that actually create things, that creates jobs, that fuels our economy. The other point that I think is really important to mention, and I think, Sean, maybe you point on it, but our contribution to this, to bring a U.S. center here. This is not just an Oakland County thing. This will be a U.S. center where Oakland County will be at the center of what this advanced manufacturing for the future is. But the resources that we're bringing to the table is to help seed this as being matched dollar for dollar after heavy arm twisting with the Michigan Economic Development Corporation to really give this the runway to be incredibly successful and to be the place where the world is going to turn to Oakland County. Best practices. How do you shape this? How do others jump into the space? And I'm super excited about it. Of what the future tells when we talk about Project Diamond, what we did, and then what the next reiteration, with next phase coming forward. The timing couldn't be more perfect, and I'm super excited about what this is going to create for the future.
Yeah, and I just want to follow on with that. This is ground zero for the U.S. Center for Advanced Manufacturing. So what that means is on an annual basis, probably next fall, we will have manufacturers from all over the world descending on Oakland County in regards to having an annual event on U.S. advanced manufacturing. That puts us at the center of gravity for these conversations. It also helps create a pull, as you mentioned, with the mom and pops that haven't done this conversion to digitization. And we'll be back talking about Project Diamond Phase 2, and we did Phase 1 to try to create a tipping point, but we have over 2,200 manufacturers in Oakland County. We have more manufacturers in our county than any other county has. Manufacturing jobs, there may be more manufacturing because some of the bigger plants might be in Wayne County in regards to the auto plants. But we make things here. But the other thing that's very important about that is there's a symbiotic relationship with R&D as well. And so when the Coulter administration talks about being robust on manufacturing, it's not robust on old manufacturing, it's robust on new manufacturing. And Oakland County has always led the way, and we need to continue to lead the way on this piece as well. So we're leaning in on this. This helps us pull up our mom and pops, as Commissioner Spiz was talking about as well. $4 billion investment by GM, the biggest investment that GM has ever made in the Lake Orion plant. But what that means, that we need to double down in Oakland County and start to run faster, because the electrification of vehicles is going to reduce the number of parts, and that reduction in parts is going to have a big impact on Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 suppliers. And so we can't wait for that to happen. We need to make sure that that conversion starts to take place. So we want you to know that we're thinking about this day and night, and this is part one of resolving this problem that stands in front of us.
Mr. Cavell.
I think I understand what you're talking about, but can you explain just a little more specifically what the $3 million will go towards? Is it membership with the World Economic Forum? Is it this Project Diamond? What are I get the Industry 4.0 is changing everything, the Internet of Things. We need to make sure everything's connected. Car companies or software companies. What is this money going towards? Because I didn't hear that.
So it's $2 million a year, so $1 million per year from Oakland County, $1 million per year from the state of Michigan.
Okay.
That $2 million forms our operating budget to staff up the center, to be able to go and interface with manufacturers all over the world and begin to build a structure within the state of Michigan for convening, for getting manufacturers here. In other words, the World Economic Forum has two marquee events in the world. They have Davos, which is in January, and they have China built a center in Tianjin and Dalian. They alternate every other year between Tianjin and Dalian, which is called the Meeting of the New Champions. We intend to make this center the third pillar of the global manufacturing agenda. And so this money goes to seed that. And by the way, we fully intend, we've only asked for 3 years of funding. That's because we fully intend this center to be self-sufficient. It should be self-sufficient to the tune of many, many millions beyond that. So we intend to be, this is intended to be seed funding. There's no request that we're anticipating after this initial request. But we have to have this money to begin to put in the infrastructure that will then attract the manufacturers from around the world to begin to set up programs to focus on the key pain points that they have. Does that help answer?
Yeah, so when you say infrastructure, it's staffing.
It's staffing.
It's people that can go to conferences and do business attraction. Is it giving grants out to current manufacturers or anything like that?
Yes, the intent is the grants will be a match.
Okay.
So there'll be a small portion, we think 400,000 of that $2 million a year will be matching grants to manufacturing, because to solve problems, you actually have to do the work. And we want that work to be available to our small manufacturers. So as we're doing the work with a partnership of a big, we have to have skin in the game, otherwise they'll keep it all for themselves. So that's kind of around the world how it works when you want to create knowledge and then distribute it. You form a partnership and say, you get to keep the knowledge and we get to keep the knowledge. And when that happens, good things happen for our community. So that is our intention. That's what the money goes for.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other comments from commissioners? I will add that what's probably acutely interesting to me is how this can marry up with our commercial real estate in Oakland County in terms of repurposing some of these buildings that have such low occupancy and just kind of wrapping our minds around how we can support in a multifaceted kind of fashion. So that was quite interesting. And I think my only other comment was that Mr. Ford and Mr. Chrysler and others, Lear, BASF, all of them are probably excited to hear how we're refocusing and making sure to, it doesn't surprise me that Oakland County would be that third pillar. I mean, maybe I'm just biased, but I think we should be that third pillar in the economic space globally. And I'll leave it at that. So I do need to get a motion and support for the amendment. It looks like Mr. Woodward and Mr. Spiz.
And then, to be clear, this first amendment is the title and the therefore be it resolved, or are we also adding the additional?
You okay with adding mine to that? Reports, just add for the quarterly reports? David?
Quarterly
Take
reports,
it.
right?
Yeah, we're changing U.S. Center for Advanced Manufacturing, right?
no.
In
Right, yeah.
in the title, in the second whereas, and then in the first, therefore be resolved.
Okay.
In those three places.
And then there's a, be it further
Oh, the
resolved
quarterly report.
As,
Yeah.
request a quarterly report from
Yeah.
Automation Alley on the
I
status.
would love the opportunity to evangelize manufacturing in front of this commission every quarter.
Sure you don't want every 6 months?
Good
How much
answer.
excitement can you take? But yes.
And you got to bring widgets.
Bring
Okay.
machines. So can we add
Or
that,
cartoon.
that be it further resolved too?
Yeah, that'll get cleaned up in between.
Got it, perfect.
meetings. So,
Okay.
yes, so this is the amendment on all of those things.
Yes.
Very good. Prompt the vote.
You have 6 yeas, 0 nays on the amendment.
Thank you. 6 yeas, 0 nays, motion carried. Fantastic work from,
Now gotta do.
oh yeah,
do the
there's
recommended
more
portion.
voting. Yes, so let's prompt the vote on the original
As amended.
resolution as amended.
You have 6 yeas, 0 nays.
6 yeas, 0 nays, motion carried. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you
Keep
so
up the good
much.
work.
Thank you.
That takes us to item 11 on our agenda. Moving right along, that is public comment. You're welcome to, let's see. If there's anyone from the public who'd like to speak during this time, please come up, state your name and residence for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
Hi, my name's Catherine Kennedy. I'm from Lake Orion. And I used to be an entrepreneur and in business. So when I hear government thinking that they can spend all this money to create industry, I'm very concerned because I realize that government only gets money from the people. They don't get money from any other place. Taxes keep going up. It's really quite ridiculous that we're talking about more increases in costs to spend $3 million on a World Economic Forum that is not in the best interest of Oakland County citizens. There's another section of the World Economic Forum, and maybe you're not aware of that. And I believe it might be a contributing factor why a lot of the woods got destroyed first, and big signs said proposed special land use pending. We are having this attainable housing trust. That's all designed for people from other countries to come and take our assets. There's a lot of that going on, whether you realize it or not. It's in violation of the Constitution, in my opinion. And I actually have seen enough in industry and manufacturing on a global level, and was a global production cost analyst, and can tell you these things don't work. We've done it, we've tried it, and we should not be ignoring the expert citizens that come to you each meeting and tell you things that are not advisable for our county, and you do it anyway. So I am very concerned about how many regional aspects and global aspects that we're taking in as our priority with our Oakland County tax dollars. The entire environmental group has to do with the UN's version of no poverty is #1 solution. That's ridiculous. Their democratization of manufacturing, that's socialized manufacturing. Doesn't work. We are pushing manufacturing out of our country by eliminating oil and gas, which is required. And by the way, all those windmills require a bunch of oil to operate as well. So I have a really big concern when we're going to be one of 3, including China. The global companies already sold us out to China, guys, whether you realize it or not. And I take great offense to them claiming Automation Alley started in 1999 when I have documents from Oakland County Economic Division in 1987 that had Automation Alley already in the annual report. So there are things that I know if you're not old enough, you won't remember that we almost bankrupted our country once when we tried to manage low-income housing for everybody. You probably won't remember the savings and loan crisis because of all that. You may not remember the manufacturing crisis and the banking crisis in 08 and 09 that almost took us out. But whenever government gets involved, it costs us more. Doesn't matter how you look at it. So we have to have reduced government, not overreach of government. And the Constitution is being violated day in and day out right now in this country, and it just shakes me to the core. So we need to start working for the citizens of Oakland County exclusively. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak from the public? Please state your name and residential location.
Ross Barranco, City of Novi. I apologize getting the agendas mixed up. My phone downloaded the finance before the infrastructure. Speaking of the section, the 8, the water and the pipelines, the water pipes and all that sort of stuff, as Commissioner Spiz said, think out of the box. I was thinking that one of the things that we can do is try to see what we can do to put the brakes on and keep the brakes on inflation. That'll keep the costs down on doing these projects. And the other thing is, what can we do for the people who are at the poverty level and below the poverty level to get them raised up where they will be able to afford their water bills and that, and then we don't have to come up with some creative solution of how we're going to handle it because they can't pay for it. We need to try to help them to be able to pay for it themselves as well. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who'd like to address the EDI committee on May 4th? Okay, seeing no other folks looking to speak during public comment, we'll close that portion of our agenda, which then leaves us to simply, any other business to come before the committee? Seeing none, I declare the meeting adjourned.